Welcome to another 3-Minute Therapy weekly podcast. I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've written a number of books. The most popular one is called 3-Minute Therapy. My partner is in the field this week, so he won't be with us, but Chris Rossini, our tech engineer, is and provides an invaluable service for getting these podcasts on. Every podcast discusses REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy was devised by Albert Ellis and created a revolution in the field of psychotherapy from the more traditional therapy, where you assume your emotional problems as an adult come from your childhood, to the more cognitive behavior therapies started by Albert Ellis, which has an entirely different assumption. And that is our emotional and behavioral problems don't come from our childhood. In fact, don't come from any particular situations, but rather they come from our thinking. The ideas in our head, our views, attitudes, what we tell ourselves right before we create our problems that cause them. So that's a very powerful idea, because if it's your thinking that causes your emotional problems, if you're anxious, depressed, or angry, then you can identify the thinking that causes that and change your thinking. And you don't require a therapist to speak to and lean a shoulder on for years and years and years. You just change your thinking. So a particular benefit of this type of therapy, rational emotive behavior therapy, is it teaches you to be your own therapist. When you're upset, that's a red flag telling you you have some irrational beliefs. Now, irrational beliefs are in the form of demands: must, should, supposed to's, have to's, escalating your preferences into musts and shoulds. For example, there are 3 main musts that cause emotional problems. The first is a demand on oneself: because I prefer to do well and get your approval, therefore I absolutely must, I have to, and if I do poorly, I'm worthless, and if you disapprove of me, I'm no good. So they lead to these global evaluations. And that first must, the demand on oneself, usually manifests itself as anxiety, guilt, shame, embarrassment. The second main demand, the second main must, is a demand on others, not on oneself. And that takes the form of: because I prefer you to treat me well, fairly, kindly, reciprocally, lovingly, therefore you must, you should, and you're a rotten person if you don't. And that must, a demand on others, causes anger, resentment, and hostility. The third and final must is not a demand on people, on oneself or others, but on the impersonal conditions of one's life. And that takes the form of: because I strongly prefer my life to be fair, easy, and hassle-free, therefore it absolutely must. And if I have the slightest hassles, the slightest discomfort, or the slightest frustration, then my life is horrible and I'll be miserable forever, or I might as well commit suicide to end it all. So that's the must of, and that's normally the must of addictions. And what we'll be discussing today is procrastination, actually. And procrastination and addictions are very closely related, because an addiction really is procrastinating, putting off on doing what's best for you at the moment. Let me back up a little on procrastination and just mention there's two types of procrastination. Means delay, and I think translated from the Latin, it means for tomorrow, and you put it off for tomorrow. So sometimes, or probably throughout the day, it's reasonable to put something off for tomorrow because there are only 24 hours in a day. You're not going to get everything done today. So it's important to prioritize and do what you think is most important and put off the rest if you don't have any time for it. But unreasonable procrastination is when you procrastinate on doing the more important things today in order to do less important things, usually because they're more pleasurable in the moment, but lead to lead to more problems in the longer run. Procrastination happens to be the most common psychological problem people have, and therapists rarely discuss it. Maybe because it's not that sexy to discuss procrastination as it is to discuss anxiety, stress, anger, those kind of addictions, those kinds of things. So, and also probably because therapists procrastinate. Since they're human, they probably procrastinate throughout their day. And so it's like a fish doesn't recognize water because it's swimming in it all the time. Now, procrastination really is larger than addiction. If you cure your procrastination, you're not addicted, because if you do what's best to do right now, which is not take another drink, and don't procrastinate on what's best to do now, then you won't have a procrastination or an addiction problem. So that's pretty much the ins and outs of procrastination. One of the things to do in order to get over it, in addition to changing your thinking, is to set specific behavioral goals, what you're going to do throughout the day. And I recommend to many of my clients, the night before, set a schedule for the next day. Items you want to get done, even times you want to get them done, and that'll tend to help you procrastinate less. Okay, if you have any questions about anything I've discussed, please put it below. If you have any other comments, please put them below. If you give the podcast a like, if you like it, suggest subjects for future podcasts, or even better, volunteer to come on a podcast. If you have a problem, we'll help you with the problem. And if you'd like to suggest someone who might be interested in coming on, or another therapist who'd like to discuss their approach as compared to the rational emotive behavior therapy approach, let me know. And subscribe to the 3-Minute Therapy podcast to stay on the rational side of life.